Today we're going to talk about equivalent fractions. Equivalent fractions are fractions that name the same amount. So in this case, we have our fraction 4/5. We have our numerator as 4, our denominator as 5. That means we have 5 total sections. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, in a perfect world, these sections would be equal. However, they're not because I had to hand draw them, and so they're not quite equal. But we're going to pretend that they are. Of these 5 sections here, we have 4 of them shaded with blue. 1, 2, 3, 4. That represents our 4 shaded with blue out of 5 equal parts. Now, an equivalent fraction to this would be we would try to create using or dividing this by a specific number. So in this case, I'm going to divide our fraction here in half. Now, in a perfect world, we would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So our equivalent fraction is going to be 8/10, because we now have 10 equal parts and 8 of them are shaded in. Notice we didn't actually have to change any of our shading here. All of our shading stayed the same, and therefore we have an equivalent fraction. On this next slide here, we are going to be creating equivalent fractions. Now we can create equivalent fractions 2 separate ways. The first way in which we can do it is we can divide. So I'm going to take 6/8, and 6/8 is equal to 6/8 divided by, and I have to choose a number that can be evenly divided into 6 and 8. And I'm going to select 2. So I'm going to put my 2 here and a 2 here. This is going to give me an equivalent fraction. So now I can divide, and I have 6 divided by 2. 6 divided by 2 is going to be 3. And I have 8 divided by 2, and 8 divided by 2 is going to be 4. So my equivalent fractions are 6/8 and 3/4. Now, the other way in which we can do it is we can multiply. However, we want to make sure that anything we multiply or divide, we must do the same number to both the denominator and the numerator. So over here, I'm going to multiply, and I can choose whatever numbers I want to multiply this by. So my original fraction's 2/3 here. I am going to take that, and once again, I'm going to put an equal sign in here, just showing that what I'm doing is going to be the same thing. And so we're going to take our fraction 2/3, 2/3, and the whole reason I'm doing it this way is just to kind of show here that my fraction, my numerator, and my denominator kind of divide in how I am multiplying or dividing them. And then I am going to multiply it this time, both my numerator and denominator, by the same number. And I can choose any number I want. So I'm going to go with 8. 8 times 2, and then anything I do to the numerator, I have to do the same thing to the denominator. So I have to do 8 down here also. And that is then going to equal 2 times 8 is going to be 16. And 3 times 8 is going to be 24. So 16/24 is now equal or equivalent to 2/3. Just as 3/4 is equivalent to 6/8. Now on my next step here, I am going to identify an equivalent fraction. And in this, I'm going to actually use a trick. This trick involves multiplication. So, what we are going to do is we're going to look at our denominators and our numerators, and we're going to what is called cross multiply in order to figure it out. So, I am going to multiply my 4 times my 8. 4 times 8 is 32. And then I'm going to multiply my 12 times 3. 12 times 3 is 36. Now because 36 is more than 32, I know that these are not equivalent. So I want my non-equivalent sign, which is a equal sign with a cross through it. So these would then be my equal sign with a cross through it, meaning non-equivalent. Over here, we're going to try this one more time. Over here we have 2/3 and 4/6. So in order to see if these are equivalent fractions, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to use our trick. I'm going to cross multiply. I'm going to take my 3 here and I'm going to multiply it by 4. And that is going to give me a 12. I am then going to take my 6 here and I'm going to multiply it by 2. 6 times 2 is also 12. Because those numbers are the same, I know that these are equivalent, and so I'm going to put my equivalent sign, which is an equal sign. And that is how we find equivalent fractions, how do we determine equivalent fractions, and how we identify equivalent fractions.